5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
This is episode 442 of WP Water Cooler, Little Contributor, Big Community.
42. That's everything. We have all the answers. Oh, I'm Sé Reed, and I'm first today. I am at Sé Reed on all the things, listening on Twitter, but not posting.
Y'all know who it is. It's your boy Jason Cosper, aka Fat Molameg, back at it again on the world's most influential WordPress podcast. And speaking of podcasts, check us out on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Audible, Spotify, if you're still using Spotify. But come on, we've all moved on at this point. Not really. It's still the largest streaming service in the world, but whatever. Who's keeping track? And we have a guest with us today.
Am I still a guest? At this point, I'm unclear if I'm still a guest.
I think you're technically still.
You're I think you're more like a series regular.
I think so.
Does that make you like? I'm going to try to think of a Seinfeld correlation.
A featured player.
Oh, my
I wouldn't call her a Banya, but and a Newman. That's also kind of not a great Seinfeld analogy, but
definitely not Newman.
No soup for you.
Not Newman.
For you. There we go. Hi, I'm Courtney Robertson. You can find me at courtneyr.dev, around the WordPress training team, at a WordCamp near you, and all those things. Good to be here again, friends.
Wonderful, and it's great to have you, Courtney. So you proposed this topic today. I'd love it if you could give us a little background on this.
Beer.
Oh no. And Sage just starts spinning.
She does. So I will vamp for just a minute. Folks, if you haven't tuned in yet to check out the big picture goals as they're outlined from Josefa recently on make.wordpress.org/project. That's a lot of what we're going to be looking through for today. In it, she shares a lot of the priorities as we're looking ahead into 2023. I like the way that she's broken it down. There are some areas there that I think we'll see still evolve. And so that's definitely the idea of where Sé would like to take us today. But I think she might be having some internet difficulties.
or computer difficulties. She has she's had this long-suffering desktop computer that she desperately needs to upgrade and just has not yet. But knowing Sé, she'll probably buy a brand new one and it'll sit next to her desk for a few months before she actually plugs it in. But that's fine. She's a busy woman. It's all right. And hey, look at that. Sé's back.
Oh, look at that. The internet continues to not work for me.
So I briefly introduced that we would be looking through this post today. I'll let you take it from here.
Yep.
Or did you freeze again? Oh, no. The wonders of live broadcasting.
I've shared. Oh, yes. Jason Tucker. Oh, wow. Yes, that is correct. I shared with Sé that I had issues quite similar to some that she's been having lately. And it turns out my internet provider here is Comcast because cable's the only thing available to my house. Chipmunks and squirrels were eating the wires from the street into my house. And that was why I was having so many problems. Those darn squirrels will keep Comcast staff employed. So there's that. Jason Tucker, we miss you today. I hope that the water poloing is fun for your family.
Yes, absolutely. And we're trying to keep this ship afloat in his absence. And Sé's internet problems are definitely helping keep us on our toes. But so one of the things that we were kind of discussing in the pre-show, and normally we have this rule where we don't discuss the show before the show, but having Sé and Courtney, plot things out. Courtney loves to come prepared. I'm running the show, and Tucker has things on autopilot normally, so I also like to come very prepared. We have some things that we're going to share today, but this 10,000 foot view is kind of what we focused on when we were talking about things at the jump here. I think it is really interesting, and one could argue that some of the things that get put in this like sort of 10,000 foot view, it's like, oh, why is that over here and not over here? But the way that Josepha broke things down is interesting. We've got the CMS pillar that we're going to have a focus on for 2023. We have the community pillar, which will be re-engaging our community through learning, events, celebrating our 20th year as a project. Courtney, you especially have experience with the learning portion of that. And then ecosystem, update distribution methods and mechanisms for extenders and core itself. So these are kind of the three big focuses for the project this year. Say, is your internet stable enough for you just to chime in?
Good golly, I hope so. It's been a nightmare. I think it's working. Is it working? Is this thing on?
Yes. We can hear
me now. Okay. Yeah, so you totally introduced all that. That's great. The way that I was hoping we could look at this today is when one is looking at this as a individual contributor or as a team really of contributors, I think that especially if you're new, I think that it is it's slightly overwhelming. It's probably more than slightly overwhelming, but it's at least slightly overwhelming just because there is so much, and there's so much happening in this global worldwide project, and it's happening 24 hours a day, 7 days a week because of time zones and the way that works. So channels will start pinging on Sunday night here on the West Coast, because people are starting their work days at somewhere else. Right. So mute your Slacks. No, but manage your Slack mutes. But so when you're looking at this whole, even just breaking it down into these three buckets or pillars, they're huge buckets. And I thought that so as having all the experience that you do have on Learn, Courtney, but also through something that I want to talk about that you do every week, and then also in my new role as marketing team rep, I was really looking at the onboarding process in terms also in reflection of the work that's happening on 5 for the Future, which I think is mentioned in this list somewhere. I'm sure it is, really. So essentially looking at all of those things together really inspired this, because I realized if you don't know where to go for any of this, it's really like you're like, great, all this stuff is happening, but where is it happening? And I can participate, but how? And I've been using WordPress for 10 years and I'm not sure where the discussion is happening on the site editor, because there's really people that can't find that. And then on the other end, there's folks who are working on the site editor. And McCarthy, I believe. Is it McCartney or McCarthy? I corrected myself. McCarthy. Okay, I was like, wait, is she like Paul McCartney? Like, no, McCarthy. She worked so hard to put out testing calls, but unless you find those testing calls, then you can't give your input. And there's just so much. So that's really what I wanted to speak to today is, when we're looking at all of these things that Josepha is talking about and that are the, goals for 2023, not even just like bigger goals, because there's bigger goals past this. How can we navigate that as individuals or people who are wanting to get more involved in this 20th year? So I really wanted to introduce this project. Is it a project? It's an undertaking. I'm not sure what you would classify it as that you have done. It's a life mission. So Courtney, if you could talk about what do you call it? A summary that you put out every week about the Make teams?
Yeah. So Jason, here is a link for you. Each week, I put together a look at all of the various teams in Make, as well as a couple of key GitHub repositories. And I list out, here is everything that just happened this week and what to know about. There is a great little bot if you're on, since we have some Mastodon users here. If you're on Mastodon, there's a WP bot, I think is the name of it, but it shares some of these same resources too, which is great. But this is every week I put together a call.
This is formatted.
Right.
This is what is important about this.
And as the week rolls
on,
I publish on Wednesdays to give most of the teams a chance to put their things out for the week. But if anyone has late breaking stuff Thursday or Friday, I try and get in here and add to it. But you can see here is everything that just happened just last week.
Literally just last week. So for those of you who are listening, Cosper has been scrolling through this post that Courtney does every week, which is just a collection of sections from each team. With, by the way, training is just like prolific these days. You all are like dumping content out into the ecosystem. But every team has
at the bottom too for the devs. There is a nice little spot where I try at the very bottom to go look at PHP, JavaScript, like the ECMAScript papers.
Good Lord.
Yeah, this is the hidden gem. A lot of people haven't always noticed. Composer, NPM, any of the changelogs that are recent for some of those things that we in WordPress are also using. Just note that I'm trying to include a little bit of the things that are super common like that.
So this is why I say, I mean, this is something that you've been able to undertake as a sponsored contributor, but this is published on post status.
Yes.
So that is evolved post status has a huge place in the WordPress ecosystem, including the post status Slack, which is a big community of WordPress business leaders, business owners,
a lot of contributors in there too.
Yeah, a lot of contributors where it's, kind of this it's like the LinkedIn for WordPress, the LinkedIn Slack for WordPress. Yeah. And can you tell us a little bit about that collaboration?
Yeah, so Corey and I were chatting about Corey Miller, who owns Post Status. We were discussing, more content that would help elevate to the rest of the third-party ecosystem, those that are the extenders of WordPress, what's happening inside of .org and why they should care, what they should be aware of, what they should know about. And out of that came this idea of, well, how can we continue to elevate this? And one of the ways to continue to elevate it is just to keep presenting, here's everything that just happened last week. And out of that, what I'd love to have seen is that folks like Say and a few other podcast host kind of folks have told me they often read these in prep for their shows for the week ahead. And they have a more clear picture of what's going on inside of WordPress as well. So not only are we influencing, hopefully, the extender community, but also those that are covering the news that the rest of the community tends to listen to, which is great.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like this is a resource of news that is so valuable because so much is happening in all of these make teams, and you really surface it and summarize it and link to it, which is the key third component. So anyone who's looking for that level of information should check it out. And which channel in post status? You post that every week in which channel?
I usually share it in Club, and I share it off of all my own social handles, and it goes out off of post status's social handles as well. So if you're following any of those in any platform, you'll find it.
And you said, Courtney, that it does make it into WP bot over on Mastodon as well?
It does. And I also did a pull request to add a couple of sources from around.org to WP bot recently too.
Yeah, so I mean, I think even the thing is that you're already synthesizing what's happening, again, just in the make teams. And it's this incredibly just like full post. It's like a newsletter on, this doesn't even have any like prose, right? It's literally just links and titles.
And very neutral and give the facts.
And right, you're just really you're summarizing what happened in those teams, and it is so much. But each of those issues or each of those things tend to be whole conversations that are happening on the make team. Yeah. So it's less of a fire hose. It's like you took a fire hose and you put like one of the like little hose nozzles on it, but it's still on jet stream. It's like you can only reduce the fire hose so much when you still have just this massive amount of content that is happening every day. So I think that this is the place to stay informed for not existing people. Hopefully only existing people are using your materials.
Yeah.
Ooh, spooky. WordPress supernatural. But in terms of new people or new places to find out what's going on, that are just getting into the project or are trying to get back into it or stay more informed or reconnect, whatever, in between WordCamps. I've been looking and really found a dearth of entry points for that. So I was hoping we could kind of go through that list a little bit, and maybe talk about some of the places that it's best to join in the conversation, or at least see what's happening.
Yeah. Depending
on all those different buckets, pillars. Are they buckets or pillars? Those are really different things. Like a bucket is like the reverse. Maybe
it's a category, not a tag.
It's a bucket turned upside down so that it's like a pillar / soapbox. I don't know.
Billers, puckets.
It's a biller.
It's a bucket.
It's a pillucket.
Just bring it together.
Yeah. All right. So, oh my gosh, I even just looking at this list, I feel. Even knowing what's going on and paying attention, as soon as I start looking at this list, I am like, wow, that's so much, because the first one is APIs. It's just like,
right.
It's a small little topic, just APIs. Yeah. But the fonts API is a big deal.
It is.
I know I have, was it on this show that we were talking about fonts?
It could be. I know that
very likely.
One of Yoast's contributors, Ari, was handling the fonts API early on, and that had to get punted a bit. But the idea being that helping with localizing the fonts onto your website without needing to load lots and lots of them, Google Fonts, integrating Google Fonts is violating GDPR in some places and some other concerns. It's a drain on performance and some other.
Right.
So Fonts API is supposed to help us with solving that. I like the fonts.
Yeah, but I think this is something that's really important to theme developers specifically, and also
performance.
Just folks who use performance. That's you, Cosper, and also just folks who are using it, because I think a lot of users like having all of the options. That not being restricted to just a couple things. And so how does that becomes that decisions, not options, part of that ethos, right? That you would limit within each theme, really, or perhaps within each style, the fonts that you're only calling very specific fonts. So I think that is an issue that's, it sounds almost innocuous as part of, it's phase 3, we'll talk about some fonts or something, but that has a real potential to have a really big impact on just use in general, and style and design, and where WordPress goes, so goes the web. So if we're really limiting fonts, I wonder how that will affect the ecosystem. But anyway, we can keep going. I don't actually know where to talk about fonts or APIs. Do you?
What interactivity API is.
I think that's related to the Gutenberg phase 3 of simultaneous editing. So users being able to interact as they do on Google Docs. Gotcha. So I think that's brand new, and I don't know. So I mean, I guess I'm not coming fully equipped to this. I don't actually know where the API conversation is happening. Do you?
I don't know where it's happening, but I think it's an interesting thing in that when you get into, especially Courtney and I both work at hosting providers, and the hosting providers that we work at offer anything from a nice managed WordPress experience down to shared hosting that anybody can come along and pay a few dollars a month to host their site. And when we get into having this, collaborative editing going on, like the interactivity API is going to turn out to be really interesting, because I mean it's hard enough having the Heartbeat run on cheap shared hosting, the Heartbeat API. Like, what are we going to do?
Hosts,
yeah, it's like running WP cron on a mid-sized WordPress site that's been around for a couple years on shared hosting is enough of a lift. Like now, we're going to have collaborative editing where 2 or 3 people, built into WordPress and it's built to run anywhere. So
what if 2 or 3 people are uploading images at the same time and they all get converted to WebP in addition to all of the other things at the same time? What happens then? Does the matrix explode?
I think what we need to do here is really boost the performance team, because that's a lot of what performance team looks at is what happens in these various configurations, right? What will happen to WordPress at a large scale enterprise type of configuration, and what will happen to WordPress installs on that shared hosting experience or on the Plesk experience, or any number of these other things. What's that experience going to look like? And I think performance team could use a boost. They're sort of a subset of the core team, but they do have their own make blog, so you can find out more about them. Just go to make.wordpress.org and you can find out. They cross post all the things.
I'm linking it.
Thank
core
you.
Performance.
Yep. I thought it interesting.
I mean, the last post that they did, because the performance team is new, so the last post they did is also the first post. Yeah. So I think performance is in a similar place as mobile, and it's kind of like being I don't know this I haven't gone through the makeup of the team, but I think it's being definitely I wouldn't say underground, like brought up by the underground, but it's getting more attention from like a wider breadth of contributors. Would you agree with that, Cosper? Like, it's not just necessarily some of the not same old people, but I'm trying to be nice and say that, like,
sure.
It's not getting as much attention as it once was, and so other people are kind of taking up the mantle on mobile and performance. Is that accurate?
I think that's fair. Yeah. I'm since Tucker's not here and I'm tasked with watching the clock. We've got about 8 minutes. So I want to make sure that we cover everything. Yeah. Actually, a big thing that is very exciting to me, it's something that Matt called out. It's something that's listed up here in the CMS group, is media management. That is a windmill that we have been tilting at for years on the water cooler, and to see it actually get some attention, I'd love to see where it ends up going, but just to kind of see where that is.
Who manages that? What team would media manager be?
Core, still core. Is that
just all core? Gosh, everything's on core.
Everything. So a lot of parts of WordPress that are not a block editor experience are still core, and we see that we haven't made a lot of changes to the rest of WordPress outside of the post editor or introducing the site editor. We haven't touched a lot of other features from a drastic feature change or UI improvement at this time. And to power some of that, just to plug in there, that PHP 8 compatibility, the PHP 8.2, I think is really vital. But listing it as the same weight of significance per the outline as the nav block, I'm not sure that. But yes, the nav block needs help too.
The nav block actually has some stuff going, and for that you can actually go to the it's still called FSE, even though now it's just site editor, but FSE Outreach Experiment channel in Slack has a lot of great testing calls, again from Anne McCarthy, and they have they've really put a lot of effort into updating the navigation block and testing that. So that's been something I actually went through some tests on it. And the new version of the navigation block is, I don't think it's been launched yet, but it's much more of the native experience where you manage settings in the sidebar as opposed to just all of a sudden managing settings directly on the page. So there's been so much constant work happening on the site editor, what you were talking about, Courtney, of like the back end needing it. And that's a lot of the work that's happening on Meta, in the Meta channel as well, is applying the site editor to different parts of WordPress.org, including the plugin repository support and comments, layout. What is that? I don't know what you would call that. Summaries that plugins do. And anyway, bringing the block editor into those components is happening, and has not been, from my observation, not been totally seamless either. It's not just like, oh, boom, bam, boom. There have been some hiccups happening there.
I thought the PHP 8.2 compatibility item should probably also go under ecosystem, or instead under ecosystem, because even if core reaches 8.2 and hosts like where Cosper and I work are offering 8.2 for those that want to run at that pace, it is more about the third-party ecosystem, your plugins and your themes supporting it. So if you've got a plugin that does a lot of lookups in the database and things, you're dealing with them also needing to be fully supportive of 8.2 as well. And that's more an ecosystem area, I would say.
Yeah, I agree.
Let's see. I thought something kind of caught my eye inside. I mean, learning, Josefa just edited that right before we, in the community section, edited that because of some comments that I was exchanging in on this post. But shipping learning content at the current pace. One of the things that the reason I very first met Angela Jin was because I asked about
community manager, right?
Yes. Yes. She oversees programs inside of WordPress.org on behalf of Automatic. So Angela Jin and I first met to talk about trying to get all of the content on Learn out with the release. And that's something Doc's team has been happening as
huge thing we've been working on.
So it's interesting that she is saying continue to ship at the current pace, not set the goal for all material should be revised as close as we can to release. So that means to me, like right now, training team is working on sorting through how do we have courses revised for releases? I don't have a good process for that. And we're asking people like, so it's saying we're going to keep going at the current pace. Well, but now we have complaints coming in that things aren't current. And
what is the current pace? That might be something that's a little broad in terms of, I think the intention behind that, and again, in terms of how can people be a part of that, is the Learn team has really been pushing out a lot, has really been sort of restructuring and putting out a lot of different types of content. And there is a lot of opportunity for content creation there as sort of an engine of WordPress, not furtherance in the world, to make it easier to use and develop WordPress. And so that is an area that definitely can use contribution at all times.
So a dovetail. I'm sorry to interrupt, Courtney, but a dovetail to that, and a dovetail to something that the Learn project has been putting out, and this actually should help, is if you do want to get involved. In a lot of cases, you will need a WordPress.org account, and like right here on the Learn site, there are in how many different languages here, Courtney? It's wild, but
yeah, marketing team made these several years ago. I want to say they started them in
Go marketing team.
Yeah,
marketing team.
You can see the little marketing team badge there. So yeah, it looks like there's close to a dozen languages that are shown of how to get your .org account and join Slack, which we know is a barrier to entry for contributors.
I mean, the fact that this something like that requires training videos, and that process I don't think has been updated, but that requires so much just effort to just even get on board, into the system, to be able to see where any of this stuff is happening. And this is also why it's like, where's you can get involved if you can find it. So one thing I wanted to mention, oh, sorry, were you going to hit on that too?
About the part with the, let me see, established contributor and mentor programs. So one of the goals inside the training team will be to have courses available for those that wish to become contributors. That mentor program, I have met with Amy June Heinlein, works these days for Red Hat, but works on opensource.com, the website. And she shared with me about how Drupal handles their mentorship program. and also how Drupal shared their created their certifications and the pros and cons with that established. And so I think I'm really excited about that bullet point personally, but I want to see kind of where in
How
all of
that
this
gets implemented.
is that what part of that goes to which teams and
how does I think the standardization and across the teams of that process will be really interesting. I did want to note before, because we're basically out of time, but I did want to note one thing that is really important is the continuing upgrade of the design of WordPress.org, which includes the design of make.wordpress.org. And right now, what is happening is the switch from /support as the place where documentations and forums are to a split where documentation is /documentation and its own world. And then forums where you can get, not ticketed, but, non-live support will be the other component of that. So that's going to be a huge shift. I think for users, that'll be really easy. But again, that's happening in the design team and in the docs team. And, if you have input on that, it's moving pretty quickly, and it's a process that's been in place for, I think, a few years now. And it's moving quickly now. It hasn't moved quickly overall, but I know there's still opportunities to weigh in on that if that's a area that you're using a lot of, especially if you are a plugin or theme developer or even a user who uses the support forums. So that's a good, I think we need more input from people who use those either on the plugin side, providing support, or on the user side, asking for support. So I'm
excited to also see where that playground goes. The WordPress playground. That's my last thought.
Yeah, that's a whole other episode in itself too. This is like just our outline of episodes for the year. So it's cool.
Right. And actually, I know we're over time, but I'm controlling this one. So,
sorry,
Tucker, so sorry. But to loop back around to the contributor and mentor programs, just want to call out on episode 434, we had Jill Binder on to talk about diversity and inclusion. And informally, there is a mentorship program that is being run on
speaker mentorship.
Speaker mentorship.
And we use them also for WordCamp organizing.
Yes.
They'll have a mentor. They have mentors to go in and partner with various new WordCamp organizers, those that are seasoned WordCamp organizers, and a process for that.
Yeah. So I expansion of this is going to be great. I think that the existing programs, if that's something that you're watching the water cooler for the first time, welcome, but also you hear that and you go, hey, I'd like to get involved. I mean, there are already programs out there where you can pitch in and help out.
Find it, do the log on and make it a 2023 resolution to get involved if you have the bandwidth. And if you don't, then just tune in and we'll tell you about it.
And I think that is a great way to end it. So here we go. I'm going to hit the outro button. All right. So go ahead and subscribe to WP Watercooler, WP Watercooler /subscribe. We got WP Watercooler, we got Dev Branch. You can subscribe at Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, YouTube, TIL vids, all the places. We'll talk to you next time.